at all. The verdict is in, not guilty on all charges. The self-defense painted Kyle Rittenhour as, a Boy Scout, and the fact that he had and so there were some things that came out that I think may have been clarifications or needed clarifications as they related to the process and where was this gun, this semi-automatic rifle. And going across state lines, just possession of it, I thought was a felony. A lot of things were changing. I thought that the judge treated Kyle like he was his grandson, getting ready to go to homecoming or the cotillion or whatever it is that young people are doing these days. But it was very interesting. To me, Rob, there was a message that was there. What was the message that you got from this verdict?
That as long as you have certain privileges, you get the benefits of the legal system that was designed for that way.
Well, mine was a little bit different. Mine was, we talked about, a need for changing the criminal justice system. Here we see some protesters or demonstrationists, whichever you want to call them, that were out there, and they were demonstrating because of Blake, who was shot and killed in that same area in Kenosha by police officers. So they were demonstrating for a black man. And what it appears to me, and I said this to somebody else, that if you're going to stand and you're going to protest with Black America, then your justice will look like Black America's justice.
Right.
And so what we see take place here is something that it's not foreign to the African-American community. It's something that we're used to. And I think that many of us were not surprised by the outcome of the verdict because of that positioning. All right, I want us to get over to this next thought. What's crazy, U.S. Representative Matt Gaetz, I think he's out of Florida. They are now trying to, he said, hey, I would love for this kid to come and be an intern for us at the White House.
Yeah.
So he is now becoming a poster child for, I guess, the far right of our nation. Actually, can't even say
Rittenhouse or
Rittenhouse. Yeah, they're talking about him coming in and being a party to, as an intern or something. I wouldn't be surprised to see him speak at the RNC at their next convention. I don't know what's going on, but I think that this is so sad because we see now that we are not getting justice the way that people think that justice should operate, and we're deputizing vigilantes to go out there and do whatever you want to, and shoot and kill, and it's okay, as long as you can make it a self-defense argument. Right. I have a real issue with the stand your ground issue that is in much of our southern states. So we are gonna just begin to see if there's anything that we can do to begin to change that aspect of this. But if Rittenhouse becomes the face of the far right as the poster child of what it means to be a good American, and that's what we see happening, Rob, we are in real trouble. COVID-19. Rob, today, which is Wednesday, we're recording this on Wednesday. I'm going to get my booster shot, so I will be what is now termed the new fully vaccinated. And so I'm kind of excited about it to go get it. I don't know why I'm excited about this one. I was not wanting to do the others, but this particular one has me excited. So I'll be going over to Kroger. I was surprised that Kroger's pharmacy is doing it.
Oh, cool.
So I'll get that done, and I'll be fully vaccinated for the holiday. My entire family will be.
Actually, we were fully vaccinated before. You're just getting a booster to that.
Yeah, so now the terminology, I think, of being what fully vaccinated means, because after that period of time, it lapses. So I'm getting my re-up on my vaccination. I'll say it that way. But yeah, so from Friday to Monday, 17,000 new cases, and this is the previous week. So you're hearing this on Sunday evening. The previous week, over the course of that weekend, the weekend before Thanksgiving, 17,000 new cases were reported in our community. And it's really kind of scary to see what's going on, but we've got to be vigilant. I don't know what this is going to look like, Rob, on the other side of this community spread Thanksgiving that we're having. Everyone wants
Christmas
to be home, travel,
Hanukkah, what have you.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what takes place here. All right, but I also wanted to take, and this is out, Rob, it's interesting because so much happens whenever we're recording this show, and we find out that this is happening during the course of the show. We know that the trial for the murder trial for Ahmaud Arbery has now gone to the jury.
Yes.
We've heard amazing closing arguments. I'll tell you, the prosecuting attorney was absolutely masterful in the way that she took us through sequentially, like outlining every single detail of that case, making sure that self-defense was not even an option because she made them the ones who were causing the issue, going through that process and so skillfully. And I think what it is, I see that she refrained from really calling this what most of us know this is. This was a hate crime. This was,
of course,
this was a black man running. And this is what the defense honed in. And I don't know if you noticed this, Rob, or did you get to see any of this?
Not much. I've seen some of it on the evening news from time to time.
Well, the defense was able to hone in and, they went full in. And I think because there's one black man and 11 white jurors, I think that they are appealing to the worst of us as Americans. And
and that's why the prosecution was very careful about not using trigger words.
Exactly. Not using those trigger words to they're being careful not to. But we saw the defense basically saying, hey, you have this Ahmaud Arbery. He's running, a black man running. The 911 call sums it up. Hey, we got a 911 call. What's going on? There's a black man running through our neighborhood. I mean, I was like, wow. And that was the issue for 911. We then see how the story goes. He didn't even have socks on to cover his long, dirty toenails. And I was just like, what does any of this have? Most runners these days are not wearing socks, or if so, they're wearing those little anklet socks.
Right.
But just this entire story, he's running, his pants are baggy. It was a narrative of white supremacy. These were arguments of white privilege and white, just white supremacy and white hate at its worst. And it seems that the defense's strategy was, I'm going to see if any of these words trigger them. I'm going to paint him as the scary black man who's been stalking the neighborhood and going through abandoned houses. Now he's running down the street, so that now this is the fear. I am saving our community from the running black people who come through the community.
And the defense and the prosecution had the Rittenhouse trial to learn from,
And so we'll see what happens. I am so it's heartbreaking to see this happen. But, and it appears that because there is a civil case that will be a part of this. And actually, they have to stand for hate charges, a federal hate crime. So I'm sure that in the federal hate crime, all of that language that we're talking about now, the prosecution will begin to put forth. But there were some serious racial undertones in the defense's statements. And it was just, they were very blatant. It was, very blatant with how they were doing things. And it was so, it was almost just unbelievable, Rob. One line that the female defense attorney said, she says that trying these three men in this case was equivalent to a modern 2021 lynching. I could not believe it. The trial of these three men, if we're going to try these three men for what they did, it was the equivalent of a 2021 lynching. And we understand the history of lynching in America. And it was something that often happened. Actually, what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, running through the community and having to run for his life and continually being cut off and continue. It was something that many of our black men had to do growing up in the South. My grandfather's stories, my grandfather was born in 1909 or 1919. And he would tell me those stories of running from the Klans, him and his brothers, and how they would have to hit back streets and how they would go into a house and they would tell their parents, your son did this, drag him out. It was vigilante justice. Yeah. And so we're seeing pieces of this resurface now. And it's very, it's frightening to see what's going on, Rob, but this is the America that we live in. Hopefully America begins to see that there are two justice systems that often present themselves and it depends on if you are a white American or a black American or Hispanic or other, I should say, determining often how that process plays out. But I've never seen a defense strategy to play the race card, to agitate the juries, to see if there was any type of sympathy, understanding where they come from, the pool of jury members come from. But it's very interesting. So we're going to get to the rest of our conversation. We have our two dynamic guests that are with us on today, and I'm going to bring them into the studio. I have with me here representing the 69th District, Julie Brixie, and my personal representative, State Representative Amos O'Neal of the 95th District. Saginaw, you are no stranger to him, but we want to welcome Miss Julie Brixie to the United Shades of Gray audience. And actually, Amos, this is the first time I've had you on this platform as well. So welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
I am so glad that you guys are here today. There's so much that is happening in the world, so much in the world around us. And I'm not sure if you guys are privy to hear the conversations that we're having before. Yes. And I think the world is kind of waiting to see what happens with this Ahmaud Arbery, murder trial. And, do you all think that there will be a response from the jury before this Thanksgiving? They say normally, people want to go home for the holidays. It's been a pandemic. We haven't seen family for, nearly 2 years, some of us. So do you think that will play a factor in what we're going to see in terms of the outcome of the verdict for this jury?
I don't know. From my perspective, it seems like they really only needed a few minutes to figure it out. But I'm not participating on the jury, so.
Yeah. So Amos, what are your thoughts? When you look at this trial, did you see? I don't know how much of this you were able to watch, because I know you're so busy saving our state and doing great things. But were you able to see any of the defense attorney's strategy in this, and how they were laying out their defense and the strong racial overtones that existed in that process? I mean, what were your thoughts concerning that portion of the case?
Yes, I saw the most I've seen was the closing arguments on both sides the other day, and I was at home, and I was amazed, like you said, something about the description of Mr. Arbery in terms of him having shorts on and no socks on. I mean, that's normal. If you're out jogging, I don't know anybody that jogs regularly that have on socks, and they always have on shorts or loose pants. So that's normal. And then to be really descriptive and trying to dehumanize the person by talking about your toenails. I mean, come on. I mean, it really is sad. I looked at that. I was really disgusted. I said, America, we have dropped to an all-time low. I really believe that, not only nationally, but globally. When people look at the United States of America, you take back, I'm not going way back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Just take January 6th at the Capitol. I mean, to see that, and the U.S. has been very democratic in our beliefs and philosophies, and we always support those countries that are trying to be more democratic. And then when we have a authoritative government in those other countries, and they're trying to upthrow and turn over the government, what do we do as the United States? We send troops over. We'll send our armed forces over to those places, and what do? We root out that person and bring them to justice. We had that happen here in the United States of America, and the main perpetrator of that crime, is still free and moving around. So what does that say to the world? They're looking at us and like they're laughing at us. Okay. And so you look at cases like we have today with the not guilty. I thought that was amazing to have a 17-year-old get in a car by his parent and be transported to a location that's none of your business, and then you got an AR-15 and you want to police and protect property. I know people they have their own opinions, but my paradigm and what I see through being a black man, and I'm not asking for sympathy, but I'm just saying right is right. Okay, come on. Who does that? Now flip the coin. Had that been a black boy and a black mom, then both of them would be in jail. Okay.
Come on, Amos. We can't. Well, we can't even begin to fathom what that would look like. We already know.
Your show is United Shades of Gray, and you want to have serious conversations. That's one thing we haven't had, Kareem. I was in a meeting earlier today with Jenny Gino. Jenny Gino, great person, and she brought that up to me unsolicited. She said, Rep O'Neal, we have these issues, but no one wants to really talk about them. And I say, yeah. And I say, you're right. And that's the problem. I think we have to talk about these issues. My colleague and I, we were arguing against CRT on the House floor. And then my colleague also, I saw she did a nice piece on the voter suppression bills on the House floor, talking about how important those things are. We are dealing with things that we fought for 50, 60 years ago. And now you think about history. History is beautiful when you learn it. Yeah. And to suppress the teaching of history, who does that?
So, Representative O'Neal, are you sharing with me that are you talking about are we talking about Representative Brixie?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So the conversation hit the House floor on critical race theory.
Yes,
is that what you're telling me? Here in Michigan. Okay. First of all, let me pull this stuff together, because we're talking about what took place. You brought up January 6th, the insurrection on January 6th, but there is a whole conversation that has gone and has passed that we have not really had. And we're talking about COVID. We're talking about critical race theory. We're talking about the state of our country. What took place right here in Michigan during the pandemic, with these militia groups, the far right groups that came in, and we were about to have our own January 6th date during the pandemic, with them haunting down our current governor, Gretchen Whitmer. And this type of behavior is becoming the norm. And so, it's almost impossible for us to have conversations on race, Representative O'Neal. But Representative Brixie, I would love to have, what do you say to individuals when critical race theory comes up? First of all, in your definition, if you could share what your thoughts are in terms of what critical race theory, and this is not even the direction I plan to go, but I think it's a point to bring up.
Well, first of all, it's bullshit, and the people who are arguing against it don't know what it is, and they don't know what's being taught in the school. Teachers are the ones that should be deciding the curriculum in the schools, not parents who are off on some wacky partisan rant or some white supremacist agenda. To me, looking at what's been happening with race relations in the nation since Donald Trump was running for office and became president, is that this undercurrent of white supremacy has been allowed to come out and manifest itself in a couple of different ways. And it's sickening. I mean, it's absolutely sickening to me to see that there really are two Americas that we're living in, and to have had the damage incurred by President Trump over his normalization of racist language, hate speech, other ethnic groups. He normalized all of these things that we had been making a lot of ground on. And it seems like, I don't know if it's a backlash against President Obama being a popular president and achieving great things. I don't really understand where it came from, but the damage has definitely been done. And the resetting of the tone of the nation is something that is hard to wind back. How do we wind that back, right? Yeah. For me, as a white woman who served in elective office since 2000, one of the things that happened for me was that when George Floyd was murdered, to me, I really felt like we had to have a reckoning here. And, I looked at myself and I looked at, what is my role? What can I do? How can I have an impact? What can I do to change things? And I did a lot of reading, read a lot of different books, White Fragility, a variety of other books. And I began to realize that, the very foundation that our government here in the state of Michigan operates on is really, one of the things that has happened is that our tax policies. And so, the systemic racism that is in our, woven into the very fabric of the way that we conduct all of our business and the way that the government operates, that's something that's going to take a lot more time to undo. And that's, why Rep O'Neal and I got together on the bill package that we're working on, is because we are recognizing that this systemic racism is everywhere, and it's my job as an elected official to try to root that out and get rid of it and put us on a more equitable ground where
Representative,
every child in Michigan.
I'm going to jump in really quick, and I hate to stop you. I just was past this from Dave Maurer. Thank you, Dave, for sharing this information. I am always, at the beginning of this show, I told you that we would probably get a verdict during the show. The insurrection happened during the show. So whenever we have this show and there's current things happening in America,
not the insurrection, the jury conviction.
Yeah, no, but I mean remember January 6th, we were on air when this was taking place.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And now there is a verdict that has been passed down in the Ahmaud Arbery trial. And I'm just gonna give you what that verdict is, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Going in, we just got this information. All three men in the trial were charged in the death of Ahmaud Arbery, were convicted of murder. On today, the jury reached its decision after 10 hours of deliberations following a trial in which prosecutors argued that the defendants provoked a confrontation with Arbery, and defense attorneys said their clients were acting in self-defense. Father and son Greg and Travis McMichael grabbed their guns and jumped in a pickup truck to pursue the 25-year-old black man after seeing him running in their neighborhood outside of the Georgia Port City of Brunswick in February 2020. Their neighbors Williams, Rodney, Brian joined the pursuit of his own pickup and recorded the cell phone video of Travis McMichael fatally shooting Arbery. So the verdict is in. All three are convicted of murder, and that took place right here during the times of United Shades of Gray. We're going to kind of talk about this, but I really want to get to your bills. But I think
Lord have mercy.
This is a lot of information that we're getting at this time.
And I think
news. Breaking news, worth having a conversation about it. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with more United Shades of Gray, conversations of race in America.
United Shades of Gray will continue on WSGW.
We're off. All right, guys. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
I think this is so interesting. I promise you, if the world ends, I think I'm going to be on this show live. Everything happens, and I said, I'm not going to be surprised if we get the verdict.
You did.
Yeah, it does. But it's funny how we have this conversation. When we get to the other side of this hour, our social media guests are still watching us. We're still live on social media. But when we get to the other side of this commercial break, and we'll be going in just a couple seconds, I think we need to just take a couple of seconds. Rob will have how much time on the other side of this break? About 24 minutes. We'll take a few minutes to unpack this, because this is
this is breaking news.
Yeah, this is breaking news.
Yeah.
And Representative Brixie, I'm going to have to bring you back and have that conversation about CRT and your thoughts. We went through and kind of dissected the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and we're waiting for her to schedule us so that she can come on the show. They have our request. But I think that's a great conversation to have, and I'm glad that you're not afraid to lean into it. All right. So we're just going to take a couple seconds here, and we're preparing for the second half of this show, and we're going to get to these bills and talk about why these bills are necessary. I'm so glad that you guys are here today.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good job.
So now I'm getting a million text messages from.
Probably have a lot of questions for us now, I'm sure.
It happens all of the time. It's crazy.
Live radio is something. You do a good job.
What's that? Yeah, here, you can take it. Thanks. Yep. Appreciate it. All right. Stand by.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
All right, we're going to do this one more time. So we record the show. It's a live recorded show, but my producer will go through and he'll edit and correct things and make sure, and then before they put it on the air for Sunday. Yes. So yeah, so this will be a program. So we'll make sure our language
okay, I got you.
It's going to remain appropriate. This is a family show.
Okay.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
Hello, this is Kareem, and you're tuned into United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. And we are back from this commercial break, and we got to unpack this information that's been passed to us concerning the Ahmaud Arbery trial. The verdict has come in. The jury has made their decision. And all three men were convicted of murder. And Mr. McMichaels and his son and Mr. Bryan, all of them are now convicted, and they will now face federal hate crimes as in relation to what's going on. All right. So I have with me, hey, who better to have this conversation than those individuals that are part of the system? We have 69th Representative Julie Brixie, and our 95th State Representative, our own guy here in the city of Saginaw, 95th Representative Amos O'Neal. All right, so guys, what are your thoughts here? The verdict is in. You were with me. Thank you for being with me in this time. If anything else happens that's going to be a current event, make sure you're on the show with me, and it'll happen during the recording, I promise you. But what are your thoughts about the outcome of this particular case?
Well, I want to say I have a mix of emotions, because I want to say that I think relief is probably one of the biggest emotions, and maybe a little bit more restored faith in our justice system after the Rittenhouse verdict. But at the same time, I can't really say I feel happy, because it's disgusting that he was murdered in the way that he was murdered, and it isn't something to celebrate that the people who murdered him are going to be punished for their crime. You wish it didn't happen, but relief, I think, is one of the biggest things that I feel right now, that the justice system in this one particular case appeared to work.
Awesome. Representative O'Neal.
Yes, I would concur, because I was, at the top of the show, I talked about how America has lost its place.
Right.
And, when you take away, it's sort of like there's a phrase about the emotional bank. A lot of times people use that in relationships and stuff. So, our Democratic bank has been depleted over and over again. And so, as my colleague mentioned, that, like, wow, if this happens like it did the other day, I don't know what would happen in our country in terms of just sometimes you take so much, and then you get a blow in the gut, and you just lose all air. It's like you just can't take anymore. And a lot of times people don't understand the plight of Black and brown people. And as I said, not asking for sympathy or pity. That's not the point. But we have to put on lenses of all people to try to understand their plight. You look at the historical situation of slavery, and even post-slavery, and even current day today, how, as my colleague mentioned, the systemic system in all factors, whether it's tax, whether it's education, whether it's housing, you name it, there are threads of systems that prohibit and prevent people from moving forward. Now, here again, I want to make sure you understand me. I'm not asking for sympathy. We're not asking for sympathy, but the fact is, you go through life doing your very best. You work hard, you do everything right. And I consider myself as a guy that did everything right. I worked hard, You know, I had a job. I used to walk to work. You know, starting out as a janitor, I walked to work. I did my job proudly. Got married, raised my family. I worked hard, and I faced a whole lot of systemic systems situations that I said, man, how much more can you take? You know, and I have resolve and resiliency, but there are a lot of folks who don't have that support. Right. A lot of folks and then you say, well, why did that person do that? Well, why did that person do that? Well, you know, that bank has been depleted. There's nothing there. So what do you expect from an empty vessel that's been walked on, stepped on, trotted on for centuries, and then you expect them to be, oh, you know, everything's fine. No, mental health. Here we go. Let's talk about mental health. You know, a lot of these issues. I'm sorry.
Okay, speaking of mental health, you brought that up. And looking at this case, would we be inclined, or do we think that mental health is a part of this case, or is this just a case of, once again, vigilantism, where we're seeing something that we don't like in our community, and we're going to take the law in our own hands?
I would say the latter part. You know, I don't think these gentlemen. I'm not a therapist, but I think what you said on the second part is vigilantism.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm talking about. When you look at, you know, you want to take matters into your own hand. And I did see and hear the some renditions of the law enforcement officer in that district that said, you know, they showed the video. This guy went in, and we do this all the time. You see a property being developed. I've done it before. I walked in, looked around. You stand, look around, you leave.
Yeah.
You know, there was nothing missing. The law enforcement said, and so. And when the prosecutors were trying to argue the case, they said, well, there's a threshold in terms of, you know, crime being committed. There was no crime committed. So they heard that. Those guys were right there in that conversation. So, but they disregarded that, and they said, okay, 911, what's your emergency?
A black man running.
My emergency is a black man running. My God, my God.
You know, when we look at this and we,
I'm sorry, it does. I can't even put the words together to explain it and clearly articulate how profound, preposterous that is.
No, it speaks a lot about where we are in our nation. But when we look at this, there are a number of things here that I think problematic for me in terms of how things played out, and it's not just that, but when we look at what happened on the scene of the crime, the fact that these men were able to take a vehicle that has been used for, you know, cornering and keeping a young man off, running him off the road, and being used for a crime, which was outlaid in the prosecution strategy, that they were able to get back into that vehicle and drive the vehicle away with there is no way in the world that would happen. And I wouldn't just say in Black America. I will say in other places outside of the old boy southern states of our nation. And so those types of things are things that when we talk about there are issues with the system, those are things because we don't have those connections and those friendships in areas that of high level of of power. To be able to do those things that would have never happened in a community where a black man was the party to something that was so heinous as this. So I'm glad that they got this right.
Yeah, me too.
And you know, Representative Brixie, I know you're saying, hey, I'm not excited but I am excited. I'm excited about the fact that that the trial, the mother gets justice, the family gets justice, those who love the mom are getting justice. There are so many cases that are yet out there, as we were talking on this show, that still, you know, are yet to get justice. We're still waiting for justice for Breonna Taylor. We're yet. I mean, there's so many cases. We could go through an hour-long show and still be sharing those individuals who still need justice. And so I think that's great. The thing that is sad about this is that when the deliberation went out to the jury, that we had to be concerned whether or not justice was going to be served. That's the real problem.
Yes.
And that's the real issue. But we justice has been served. There's nothing that you or I or we can do about it.
No.
But it happened here. So I wanted to take a little time to talk about that. I want us to transition because as we talk about equality, and this is what you were talking about, Representative O'Neal. You were talking about equality and the need to bring some equality to the system. And we saw a lot during this COVID period. But, equality and equity are two very different things. And so we would love to have equality. That's what they were marching for in 65, 50, 68. All of those, the civil rights movement was about equality. We are now talking about equality plus equity. And you guys are co-authors of a bill that is on the verge of doing something great and really targeting how can we bring both equality and equity to a system. Housing, taxes, that has been a system that has been so unfair, not only to communities of colors, but impoverished communities for so long. Redistricting, gentrification, and redlining, all of these different things that are now responsible for the tax bases that we're working with. And I will allow you guys to decide who would like to take the lead on talking about these two bills.
Yeah.
That are out there. So I'm going to say Representative Brixie.
Yes.
Please go ahead. Let them know what you represent, which areas you represent. And
okay. So I represent, as you mentioned, I represent the East Lansing area as well as Meridian Township, Williamstown Township, and Locke Township. So I have a couple of rural communities in my district as well as an urban and suburban area in my district. And, this bill package that Rep O'Neal and I introduced, it's a 2-bill package that would spend about $500 million of the state's ARPA money that's coming from the federal government and the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It would spend this money, about $500 million, in the lowest funded cities, villages, counties, and school districts in the state. And as Rep O'Neal, mentioned earlier about the idea of education and housing, one of the kind of fundamental ways that systemic racism exists here in Michigan is that we rely on property tax revenue to provide services from local governments. Okay, so your counties, your cities, your townships, they have taxes on their tax bill. They use that money to provide services like police and fire protection. They work on their water plant, they plow their streets, they fix their roads. And school districts rely on a different formula. So they get money from all of the property taxes in the state being kind of lumped together and then distributed out. But they also can put things on their tax bill that can provide them buildings, right? So we have an idea here that this budget that we passed this year is, for the first time, it removed the gap between school districts, and everybody's getting the same amount per pupil. And you think, okay, we have equality, right? We talked about equality versus equity, right?
Yeah.
So we have equality now in our public education system. Does that mean it's the same? No, it doesn't, because in Flint, they're relying on, they get their per pupil money, but they also have a way to put something on their tax bill and provide additional resources. So what happens is the suburban communities and the richer communities that have higher property values per capita, they put bonds out on their tax bill. East Lansing did it a couple of years ago, and they rebuilt all of their elementary school buildings. They put out a $7 million tax, and it raised almost $100 million, and they tore down and rebuilt 5 buildings, okay? So I'm sure in Flint that they would like to replace 5 aging elementary school buildings. But because their property value is 1/10 of what it is in East Lansing, the average home in Flint is only worth $20,000, where in East Lansing, it's $200,000. So they would have to charge a tax 10 times higher to people who can ill afford it. So you can't do that. And so they don't do that. And what that means is that they're using that per pupil funding, they're using that money for their buildings. So we don't have an equitable system. We don't even have an equal system. We have the same amount of per pupil funding going out, but school districts like East Lansing or Birmingham, they're paying for everything that they can under the sun that they're allowed to pay for on their property tax bills. They're paying with it, transportation, technology, they all have bonds out. And so they're using 100% of their per pupil funding on educating their children. Yeah. And that doesn't even begin to get into what do the children need. And if we have a poorer community, children have more needs. If children have been exposed to trauma, they have special circumstances where they need additional resources. So our bill tries to get at that and would allow a $2 million match for communities that are lower than the per capita, the property value, taxable value per capita in the state. So if you're a below average community, you can apply for a grant to get some of this money. And that's how we're going to provide some equity into our system that's much needed.
Wow. Which communities are we able to eye and say, okay, these communities fall into that guidelines?
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. But you know what? Just to add to my colleague, and to your point, there are many communities, urban and rural and suburban communities, that are impacted by this. And so, but just to give you a little, forethought here, Rep Brixie, she's the best tax person in Lansing. Okay, so really, she is. But we started talking about this when we came into office last year, right? She approached and she said, "Hey, this is." She did her research, talked about Saginaw, and it was like music to my ears, because being a city councilman for 13 years, being on the county board of commission for 4, I saw, particularly on the city, how we had to realign, readjust, cut staff, cut departments, because, Kareem, we are strangled by this 1979 tax cap.
Yeah.
That are, unfortunately, we're not able to pass. But we have to think about this. How do we want Saginaw to look? And we've been fortunate to have a great business community, great stakeholders who kept the momentum going. Our medical corridor, CMU, Garber, Hemlock Semiconductor with you. You're really doing a lot of work with that program. But we got to make sure we have funds, just general funds, to maintain basic services.
Absolutely.
So that's where, at minimum, we need to come back with that tax cap. And my point I was going to say is we reached out to the mayors in the state of Michigan. Okay, we reached out. We had a really candid conversation. We went through the Michigan Municipal League, and they set up and pulled mayors together, the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus of local elected officials. We met with that board. And as a result of that conversation, we went to different townships and had lunch, and we talked about it to different townships in Lansing and other places. From that conversations with those leaders, they say, yes, we need this. Yes, we need this. And then you can look at the statistics and the data we have that shows you percentage of folks in these different communities that say they need this. It's overwhelming. And it impacts urban, rural, and suburban. So there's no discriminatory,
across the board.
Exactly.
Awesome. So now that you guys have authored this bill, what takes place next? A lot of us, it's been a long time since the civics class. So what is the likelihood that we actually will see this bill take some traction, move forward, and actually, get into being signed into law?
The next step is that we've asked to have the bill package be sent to the local government committee in the House. And Representative Julie Kelly is the chair of that committee. And we're hoping she'll give it a hearing. She's indicated that she's pretty favorable to giving it a hearing. And so the next step is a hearing. And if it has a good hearing, then it would get passed out of committee. And then from there, it goes to the House floor. If it passes in the House, then it has to go over to the Senate and have the whole process repeat again before it could get signed by the governor. So under the legislation, you asked who is impacted by it and
Absolutely.
Who gets help. Yes. 54 out of the 83 counties would qualify. 224 out of 280 cities would qualify. 223 out of 253 villages would qualify. And a little over half of the townships would qualify. So this is something that, that addresses a well-known problem in our state. And that is that communities that have lower land value have a harder time providing services. And the things that would qualify are roads and bridges, police and fire protection, school and site sinking funds, any kind of water or sewer infrastructure, drainage, and parks and recreation.
So when we look at this, this has a process to go through. We have a Republican run Congress here in Michigan. What do we see as some of the obstacles that we might have in terms of this type of thing? These are ARPA funds, so these are funds that we would not normally have in the state of Michigan, right?
Yeah.
Right. I think the obstacles are probably the same as with any legislation, and that is that you have to get Republicans enough Republicans to agree with it that it will get to the floor. And but what was interesting when we did, there's a lot of math involved in this bill package, and tons and hours and hours and hours of research that went into it. But when we looked at the communities that qualify, the really most fascinating thing to me was that of the 110 House districts that we have here in Michigan, all but one of us had at least one community in their district that qualified for the program.
Yeah.
So that gives you some groundwork to build some consensus across the aisle.
Exactly.
Right.
All right. So,
and Macomb County is, a pretty Republican area, and the mayor of Sterling Heights is really excited about the program because it's a local government issue, and it's something that folks recognize the benefit of.
And the local government part, to add to colleague Brixie, the local government part was what was really important for us to meet with the mayors, in the state of Michigan. So we got letters of support. Our own mayor, Brenda Moore, she supported us. Mayor Neely supported us just in letter form, and Mayor Dearborn. So we got many mayors supporting it. So they're going to help us with the support we need, because our communities are reflective of the leadership. So if the leadership say, hey, we need this to our representatives, we have to respond, whether you're an R or a D. But as Brixie said, this impacts so many communities and villages and townships. It's a win-win. Revenue sharing has sort of bankrupt communities, basically. And when I came into office last year, and we were in our training, I asked about revenue sharing. I said, do we see this coming back? It was like, just quiet. Everybody's looking at each other. So that tells me there's not a real plan to bring revenue sharing back. You correct me if I'm wrong, Rep Brixie. But so, that has devastated community. So what happens? You cut services, people move out of the community, and then you have what we have now, a low census number. Right. We gotta redo this, Brother Kareem. We gotta build good housing, make sure our schools are good.
Yeah.
And thank God that just recently I read that Saginaw Public Schools had a big surge increase of student population.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of that happening. Yeah.
Okay. That's what we need in our communities.
Well, I certainly thank you guys for being with us on this afternoon. It is amazing how quickly an hour show goes by. We have had highs, lows. We have seen the verdict come in from the Ahmaud Arbery trial. I want to thank you guys for doing the work that you do. And just once again, Representative Brixie, the doors are open for you to come back and have another conversation.
Yeah, she got to come
Amos, thank you for sharing her with us.
I told you.
We want you to continue to bring some of Michigan's treasures back to our community and share them with other areas. And what you guys are representing, I want to say this, what you guys are representing in co-authoring this bill is what I would love to see more of. And that is us, not just as Democrats, but also bringing Republicans in and doing things that are exciting for the entire state, so that we can draw consensus and build coalitions, and we can get back to, the wrong party, the wrong candidate used the idea of building back, making America great again. but I like the idea of building back better. And what you guys are showing is how we can begin to build a stronger America by building dreams and ideas and coming to the table with inventions and ingenuity that is able to build a strong sense of support. I want to thank each of you for your time and attention on today. We're going to log out of here. I'm going to get next to the TV and get all of the details.
Okay.
I hope that you guys as well. Please keep us informed. And as you guys are able to progress forward with this bill, we want to bring you guys back and say, hey, this is what we need. Let's talk to the cities of of the mayors of our cities and make this happen. Thank you once again for your time and attention. You guys be blessed. Have an amazing
My pleasure.
Good day. God bless you all. Grace and peace.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.